Welcome to Teis Talks, where we discuss all things faith and family. Today's topic is a very serious one. It's about growing up fatherless. Pastor David Teis, when his father passed away, he was only about 10 years old. So he personally experienced this phenomenon of growing up fatherless.
Yes, we did. My dad was actually died 2 days before Christmas during the time that I was 10 years old. It was very interesting. I hear so much about all the trauma that kids go through, but I never thought I was going through a traumatic experience.
Wow.
I never thought of I never thought of myself as fatherless. I think there's several reasons. I think because though I missed my dad, I can remember my mother walking in on the day that Dad passed away, and she said, "I need to let you know your father's in heaven." And she left, and I just lay there and thought about it. And I went out and I said, "Mom, will Dad know us when we get to heaven?" And she said, "I don't know that."
Oh, wow.
And she said, I know he's my dad." So I talked to a preacher, and the preacher said, "Yes, he'll know who you are. He'll know you were his son, and he'll know, and you'll love him just like you loved him now." And I began to understand things about eternity because of my dad passing away.
Wow. Well, that was really my first question. I was going to ask you if you could share some early experiences growing up without a father and how it really shaped your perspective on life. I love that your mom took you to a pastor to ask those questions, because instead of just, "I don't know," and then you being left hopeless, she could have just been like, "Oh, I don't know," but bringing you to somebody who could answer those questions.
I don't know. I don't remember the exact person who told me the verse that says that God is a father to the fatherless, but that really made an impact on me. I thought, man, as a fatherless child, and I didn't think in those terms. As somebody without a dad, I thought, oh, God can be my father.
Wow.
And I really believe this. I believe that a child that does not have a father can have a close relationship. I don't want to say closer, but there's a reality.
A unique
yeah,
relationship.
There's a reality of his presence that others may not experience.
Right.
You become dependent upon him, and you begin to talk to him as your father because he is your father.
Yeah.
And so there was a reality of him being my father even before I understood the truth of salvation.
Wow. What do you think were some specific challenges that you faced during your childhood? Like, I know you said that you didn't look at yourself as fatherless, but looking back, what do you look and you think, yeah, I experienced some definite challenges because I was fatherless, and this is actually how I coped, and this is how I've, as an adult, how I drew closer to him.
I can remember when my dad died, we went to the funeral, and I remember them singing the Old Rugged Cross, and I can remember, because that was my dad's favorite song, and I remember going to the coffin and looking at my dad and just seeing him lie there. I remember everybody else crying, and I didn't cry, and I didn't know why. I remember going to my room saying, "Lord, why am I not crying? Because everybody's crying, and I wanted to cry because everybody else was crying.
This is what you're supposed to do,
And so I acted sad, but maybe the reality of what had happened wasn't
hit
there.
You.
But 2 years later, I was in the 7th grade at that time. I can remember we were doing calisthenics, and somebody said something to me, "Hey, punk, don't do this," or something like that,
Yeah.
and because in the 7th grade you're pushing and shoving.
Right.
And I can remember all of a sudden when this guy said this, the thought went into my mind, I don't have a dad to defend me. And I started crying. I can remember the kid that was in front of me
And this
had
was the
that
first
had pushed
time
me.
you had cried
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. For
Wow,
after 2
2
years,
years.
I just started crying, and it was uncontrollable. Now you're in the seventh grade. You're very concerned about your
Of course.
masculinity and
Yeah,
also looking cool,
yeah.
and all of a sudden I'm crying and I can't stop it. I cannot stop myself from crying. And the kid said, "I didn't touch him. I didn't
Oh,
touch him."
it's like, I'm gonna get in
Like,
trouble.
and the coach
He had
came.
no idea the deeper issues
Yes,
going
no.
on.
The
Yeah.
coach came over and I just started saying to him, "My dad died. My dad died." And I'm thinking, because 2 years for a seventh grader is a long, long
Yeah.
time. And I'm in my mind on the ground, bent over next to a
Oh.
wall, thinking, why is this happening to me?
Oh my
Why is
goodness.
this happening to me? And the coach is saying it's okay, and then asked me how long ago, and I said 2 years, and I'm thinking he knows that's 100 years ago,
Oh.
you know. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking I really look like an idiot, and I can't stop crying.
Wow. And you
So
didn't understand any of how trauma and grief comes
yeah,
and
I
goes,
had no
and
ideas.
you're 12. This
Yes.
is oh.
So that was
Oh man.
that
So
was a unique experience. Other things I can remember being with friends who said they were going to go. Their dad was going to take them here. They were
hmm,
going to do that, and we didn't. But there was a great thing that happened. A really great thing that happened to me. Because people were aware of my dad not being there,
yeah.
men took me under their wing. I had, first thing that happened was in the sixth grade. My fifth grade teacher was a man named Mr. Graff, and he was very, very thoughtful, very, very aware. The sixth grade teacher was a guy named Mr. Hathaway, and Mr. Hathaway, my mother must have talked to him before I got into this class. Mr. Hathaway determined that I was going to behave myself, and I got swats from Mr. Hathaway like some of the kids that were in that room later on said to me, "We look forward to every single day."
Because they bring you up in front of the room and
That's right.
swat
That's
you,
exactly
right?
right. And so,
Oh, the 50s and 60s.
so I would get in trouble, but I don't remember it being every day. But
It was quite a bit.
I have a friend named Mike Andrews who's told me it was every day. So he said it was the highlight of his day. So
That's really interesting because a lot of young men who are fatherless, a lot of times they don't have any connection to an adult man, and that just goes right into our next question. How did the absence of your father influence your views on masculinity and fatherhood as you grew older? But God really put some
yeah,
strong men into your life.
Mr. Hathaway. The first time I saw him, there was a cool sixth grade teacher that everybody wanted to have for the sixth grade.
It
There was
wasn't
like 4
Mr.
different.
Hathaway?
It was not Mr. Hathaway. I remember seeing him, and I remember saying when he was listening, and I didn't think he was listening, that he was bald, he was old. I mean, he's probably
50?
50, yeah. And I said, and I remember saying, he's just an old bald eagle. All he wants to do is sing American songs. And then he was there, and I'm like, because
No.
every day we sang "God Bless America" or we sang
Some patriotic song?
every day,
Star
every
Spangled
day.
Spangled Banner?
We pledged allegiance, and
Wow.
we sang a song, and so there was Mr. Hathaway, and God used him. But I also had my brother-in-law who was got in some trouble later on, but at that age,
Yeah.
he was there like a man.
And your
like-
brother-in-law is like 15, 16
15
years
years
older
than
than
me,
you.
yes.
Okay.
And then,
And your brother Ken was like 10 years older, and he was in the military,
yeah,
right?
but yeah, Ken wasn't always around, but
But it was still like, oh, manly men
yes,
is
yeah.
what you thought was.
And my uncles. I mean, if
Uncle
I got,
Bob.
I had Uncle
Yes.
Bob, and then I had
He was a manly man.
Uncle Lee. These are both sergeants, drill sergeants in World War II.
Oh, wow.
And,
I didn't know that.
And when we met them, when they came around, man,
You spent some summers out there with them, right? In high
well,
school or
I
college?
spent just a couple of weeks in Altoona, but my Uncle Lee lived here in town.
Oh, okay.
And Uncle Lee was very much these were men. I
They
mean,
kept you tough
yeah, and did
and
they?
didn't let you
Yeah,
be.
they were abusive.
Yeah, oh,
Actually, so
oh man.
so
We are not advocating for
no, I'm
abusing,
just saying
but that's
they
yes.
made me
Again, this was
yes.
the 50s and 60s, and
Yes.
yeah,
So we would
very
get
different.
when we got together at a family funeral, they looked like the mafia coming
Wow.
together. They got all dark hair, all
And their
glasses, and
hats
their
and
hats.
their I know
It's
the pictures of Grandpa, the old ones, I always think, wow, where he has his little
yeah,
mustache and
yeah,
it looks like you're going to the mob museum
yeah,
and you see the pictures of
yeah,
the people at the mob museum.
yeah,
That's what we have here in town in Las Vegas. Any historical things that we have are not very old. And our big museum, the history of Las Vegas, is
it's the
called the
mob
Mob Museum.
museum
It's very interesting. Highly recommend going.
no, to some parts.
Yeah, there's some parts not
We
you
don't
don't
recommend.
recommend. So, yeah, you did talk about some of these. I want you to mention a little bit about Mr. Hathaway showing up at when you first started the church. The question is, were there any positive role models in your life who helped fill the void left by your father? If so, how did they impact you? You already talked about that, but will you tell I think it's so neat that the guy that spanked you
Yeah,
every day during sixth grade
you know,
came and supported you.
I found out this uh, in the fourth grade. Um, I was taken to the principal's office and I got a swat from a guy, from our principal named Mr. Tobler. About 6 months ago, I was going through our church prayer list, and I prayed for a man whose last name was Tobler. I called him up and I said, did your
This guy goes to our church.
yes,
Okay.
he's a member of our church.
Yeah.
I said, did you have a father that was in the
School district.
in education? And he said, oh yeah, not my father, my grandfather, which reminded me how old I was. And so he said, my grandfather was a principal and he was involved in education. I said, your grandfather spanked me. Anyway, there's a lot of men in this town that have spanked me.
Wow, that's
So,
amazing.
but we had there were positive influences. So right down the street from our house, a boys' club was started, and the men that started that were also like
Wow.
male role models. But Mr. Hathaway, we kept in touch with him when you were just an infant. We actually drove to Washington because he had moved up to Washington State. We went to his place. But when our church started, the very first day our church opened, Mr. Hathaway came to
That's so
be
neat.
part of that opening service, and he
Wow,
was just
that's
a
so special.
really great influence. I think it's so important that if you know of a fatherless child in
Yeah.
your church, as a man, showing attention to them.
Yeah.
I can remember our pastor, Mr. Ripple, right after our dad died, probably within 3 months after our dad died, he took me and my sister and my brother on a fishing trip down the
Wow.
Colorado River, and he had a boat, and he used to take. He used to go fishing, but he offered us. We went and spent the night. That was a great thing, camping out.
Yeah.
And then we got up the next morning and
What
went
a
down.
memory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Stuff
just
that you
treated
would
us.
do with your kids.
Yeah,
Wow.
things that you would do as a dad.
Yeah.
He did for us, and God brought men into our lives to do that.
So, in what ways has your experience influenced your personal approach to parenting your own kids? Me.
Well, I realized how much trouble my sister was, and so when it came to parenting you, I wrote things down and I
Yes,
used them for.
yes.
So, no, the truth of the matter is, I grew up thinking, boy, I'd love to have an ideal home. An ideal meant a dad and a mom that stayed together throughout their life, and that's what I wanted. I heard about it. I saw it. It was portrayed on TV on
Yeah.
shows like Leave It to Beaver and the Donna Reed Show, old 1950s TV shows that reran during the day. I wanted that. And because I wanted that, I looked for someone to marry who had the same ideals that I
Yeah.
had, that wanted a real monogamous family,
Yeah.
and I found that in your mother, and we got together. We made a determination because her family was somewhat broken up because her dad left home when he was when she was 5 years old, and mine was gone when we were 10. And my mom and dad had been divorced and remarried, and her dad had left, and her mother had stayed unmarried for all the years, and then later on, they were reconciled. We did not have strong, stable families, and we
Yeah.
determined that we were not going to pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah.
That we were going to have a family where there was no divorce. And I often say, and your mom says that's not true, but I often say we never, ever discussed divorce, ever.
Yeah.
She's strong-willed, I'm strong-willed. We never discussed divorce. Murder several times, but never divorce. Now, she would say, if she was here, David, don't say that. That's not true. I don't know why people say things like that, because we think it's funny, but she does.
Yes, she doesn't find it funny.
But we determined that we were going to have a family that was a Bible-centered family.
Do you think because of the experience you had without having a dad around, that really made you think, even when the tough times of being married and having these kids, that made you even more determined because you think, you look and you're like, I know what it's like to grow up without having dad around. I know I've seen the trauma. I've experienced it not having that in my life. Do you think that helped you even more so? Because I know sometimes it's so easy to think selfishly,
Yeah.
you know, when the hard times come and just be like, oh, I'll get rid of this spouse. And you never do. When you get divorced, if you have children, that person's in your life for the rest of your life.
No, all you're doing is stirring hatred.
All
All you're doing is stirring strife.
Yeah.
You've made this commitment, this lifelong commitment, and it's going to be lifelong, whether you like
Because
it
you
or
have
not.
these kids in your life. Yeah. So do you think that was something that made you even stronger of like, no, we don't want this?
Yes, this is going to work out, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to let the devil divide us. Our love for Mom and I say together, our love for our children would keep us. We want our children to grow up, have stable marriages, stable families,
Yeah.
and we knew we were going to be the only example they were going to have.
Wow.
And so we determined that we were going to have that stability
Right.
in our marriage because that was going to create stable. I mean, even today, if Mom and I separated, can you imagine how
Oh my goodness.
crazy the chaos, how that would affect 30
everyone.
30 different people and their
Yes.
families in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
What's interesting too, it's you both were determined. And I'm sure at certain times one was more determined than the other to be committed. And as things fluctuate and you get upset with each other or whatever, problems arise. But that's so important. I mean, because if you have somebody that's like the Bible says they are deciding to depart, you can't really you can do all you can.
Right.
But you both were on board with.
yeah, it was
So
just
it's so important, even if you're listening to this and you're fatherless and you're thinking about getting married, you should really consider what the person that you're marrying's point of view is on sticking it out together.
strong will is good if it's a will to do what's right. All of our children, in fact, the lady I'm talking with right now, is very, very strong-willed, but they're determined to do what is right. We would always
Sitting here telling lies.
we would say, my wife, and when she spanked our children growing up, she said, "I'm not here to make you like me. I'm here to teach you to obey."
Yep.
I'm not here to
God,
make
this
you...
is her exact words. God did not put me on this earth to make you like me. He put me on this earth to make you obey. And what she was doing is telling herself that. Because when you're spanking your kid, you don't want to spank your kid And you're sitting there, and I mean, now I know she's telling herself, my job is not to make myself the most likable person in the world to these children. My job is to make them obey. And so I understand as a mom because I want to be. And I am the most likable person to my children.
That's why one day when she was spanking Felicity,
Oh, yes.
she was spanking Felicity. After she was finished spanking, the whole thing was over, and Felicity was sitting in her lap saying, she looked up at her and said, Mommy, does your mommy ever spank you? And Charity said, well, not anymore. And Felicity sniffed a couple more times and said, well, I wish she would.
True story. True story. But by this time, this was my fourth kid. It wasn't my first rodeo. I wasn't heartbroken at that point. I was like, oh, you'll get over this too, kid. I'm going to keep doing what I'm supposed to do with you. But it is. It's a difficult thing.
I was at a conference with Dr. Bill Rice, and we were speaking, and we taking questions and answers. And one of the ladies said, what if when you spank your child, she looks up and cries and says, Mommy, you're hurting me. What do you say? He said, you're darn right I'm hurting you, and it's going to hurt worse if you don't obey.
Learn to obey, and it won't hurt.
I love that answer.
Oh, that's so great. So we just have a few more minutes. We had quite a few different questions. Can you share a story of a profound lesson that you learned as a result of your upbringing? You look and you're like, wow, if this didn't happen in my life, I wouldn't be where I am in my ministry, my faith.
I learned this. I learned that God uses every situation, good or bad, to teach you how to effectively minister to others. I remember one day I walked out of the auditorium. We had a wedding or some program, and after the program was over, everybody was going back to the reception room. And I was walking through to the reception room, and I walked through the foyer, and there was a 12-year-old boy that was sitting in the foyer, and he was looking very defiant, and he was just sitting there all by himself with his arms folded. And I thought, somebody needs to go and talk to him. I said, hey, are you okay? He said, yes. I said, where are your parents? He said, my mom's back there. My dad's dead. And I looked at him and I said, oh. I sat down, and he still had that hard look on his face. I said, man, I understand that. My dad died when I was 10. And when he stopped, looked, and he just totally opened up.
Oh.
God uses everything in our life, good and bad, every situation in our life, and every part of our life that will allow him to use to reach others with the good news of Jesus Christ. And so I learned very early, I began to learn that. I've seen that more as an adult. I also, again, learned that I could call on God, and I could ask God, and I could tell God I was afraid or in those times. And I really believe there was a profound reality of his presence when I was afraid of the dark, or I was afraid of any particular situation.
Wow. Well, in closing, what message would you like to convey to fathers who are out there about their vital role, just men in general who will eventually even become fathers, about their vital role in their children's lives?
I would say this. Number one, the greatest impact that you can make on your child is loving their mother and continually supporting their mother. It's so important that you be unified with your wife. My wife and I are both very opinionated. We both think we're right about everything, and we've had strong disagreements over the years. But those disagreements are in the background while our children are not around, and when we're together, we're unified in what we say and do. I think the greatest thing a man can do for his kids is love his wife, and then together, you and your wife planning for your children. Our children know this, and our grandchildren know this, that there's no one in the world more important to us as a couple than our children and our grandchildren. All of them know that.
Well, you've done that well. I'm here to attest to it. Dad, thank you so much for being very open and vulnerable about the whole situation of you growing up fatherless. For those of you who are listening and you would like to hear more from Dr. David Teis, you can contact us at davidteis.com. That's David Teis, Teis.com. And you can have him come and speak for a family life conference, a prayer conference, a missions conference. He can preach on any kind of conference that you're interested. We also just launched our Building a Kingdom Family. It's an 8-week study on the Christian family. And what this is you watch a video of a conference that Pastor Dave Teis put on here at our church, and there's 8 different videos. You watch the videos, and then after the videos, you go on, and during the week, you have 6 devotionals on the family pertaining to what was spoken on in the video. It's great for a home study to do by yourself, in a large group study, or even in a small Bible study. But you can find that at davidteis.com. You can order it on Amazon. It's $17.99, but we'd encourage you to get that. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a fabulous Father's Day. This is Teis Talks.
And it's more than a conversation.